Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Our Roots and Tea. So, we are here to discuss more of the life topics, exploring our minds. We're talking about spirituality, meditation, the ego, our mind, philosophy, psychology, life purpose, life meaning, anything you can think of that's more of the existential part. So it's a bit of a tradition here that we drink tea with our guests while we discuss these deep topics. And today we are trying the classic green tea, the old and reliable, plenty of antioxidants. And we are going to drink this tea with our amazing guest, and this talented Luca Nicora. He is coming on to do this all the way in Japan right now, so it's great to have him on. The first question is, how do you currently feel about yourself right now?
I feel good, man. I feel really good. Yeah, I mean, I do my daily meditations every morning, and you're calling me in the morning right now, so I recently came out of it. So I do feel really relaxed and centered.
Okay, and that's how you stay centered, is doing a lot of meditation, and what else do you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think for me, meditation is a huge part of how I stay centered. I start every day with a 30 minutes to an hour meditation in the morning when I wake up, to set up that day for me. I set up the energy through that meditation. And then throughout the day, I try to stick to whatever I either realized, discovered, or whatever the intention was during my meditation in the morning. And because of meditation, because of daily meditation, I'm more and more aware of my thoughts, feelings, emotions, patterns, and whatnot. So I'm able to catch myself quicker now when I start getting into any kinds of frustration at work or whatnot, or, we're not on a lockdown right now, so I'm still going to work. But yeah, so throughout the day, I'm able to kind of streamline whatever's going on. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of moments where you're like, oh, I got something coming up, a frustration, whatever. And then in the evenings as well, I have a meditation that I do, which is going through my day, and I sort of you mental rehearse the moments that didn't work out into I rehearse them in my head in a more positive way for me to react in a similar situation.
So it's kind of similar to, what was that term? Transcendental meditation, right? You kind of have like a mantra that you repeat to yourself.
In a sense, usually what I know of transcendental meditation is that through a certain process, the guide, once you get into the system, sort of gives you a mantra. But I'm not extremely familiar with transcendental meditation because I've never taken any classes or anything. So it's similar in a sense because I have moments during which I am focusing on a certain thing, or a phrase in my head pops up during my meditation and sort of becomes my mantra for the day, the week, or whatnot. And then sometimes it comes back up. But really what it is when I wake up in the morning, I ask myself who I want to be, what kind of energy do I want to bring in the world, and what's the best expression of myself that I can imagine, and then letting that imagination and those feelings grow in me, and it's like an acting exercise in which you see yourself in a situation. You can feel, you can sometimes smell and touch, and really have these feelings grow in you and sort of explode in your heart, if it makes any sense, and then let that guide you through the day. And so yeah, not too long ago, sort of the mantra that came up for me was I am in control. Which, when I always thought of myself as not a morning person until about 2 or 3 months ago, where I started this waking up early in the morning to meditate before I go to work, because I've always meditated for the past 10 years or so.
Oh, wow.
Well, I guess it's more 7 years, but it's been a while. And so I've been through all sorts of type of meditations. I've explored a lot different kinds of meditation, but now it's like this mindset that guides me, and then this "I am in control" phrase has been helping me waking up in the morning, and like I'm like, I guess I can just hit the snooze button, and I'm like, no, I'm in control, I can do this. And now it's pretty cold out there, so when I get off my out of my bed, I'm like, oh no, it's cold, I want to go back to bed. Like, no, I'm in control. And sort of like that phrase is kind of,
Yeah.
no, I can do this. Like whatever the circumstances, I can do it. I can take control over my body mostly, or over my previous patterns, and over my situation, and how I react to it, and how I still decide, okay, I can go. I can wake up, go to the bathroom real quick, drink water, and then sit back in bed and start the process. And so that phrase has been helping me as well. And when I encounter certain situations in which I don't want to go to the gym today or something, or I don't feel like I get too much in my head, or I have colleagues, coworkers that are annoying me, and I'm like, no, I'm in control. I'm not going to let myself feed these thoughts and that energy, and then just like keep going into, what do I want to be? How do I want to express myself today? You know?
And for you, when you're thinking about that, you're only thinking about the present moment today. You're not thinking about who I want to be, or how I want to present myself 2 days later, or a year later, or a week later.
Well, that's a really good concept, and quite important, I think. The whole being the present moment is definitely an important concept in meditation, but also something that is very obscure for many people. The present moment, what the hell does that mean? To me, I think the present moment is really when you're able to let go of your anxiety of the future, fear of the future, let go of the memories of the past, of your emotions of the past, and just be fully present. And that moment, just like a heartbeat, comes and goes, comes and goes. And the more you meditate, the more you're aware of yourself, of your body, of your feeling, of yourself, and the awareness, sort of awareness of yourself and of the space in which you are. Then you sort of connect with that eternal present moment. But from that moment, you can create anything. You can create your future from that moment. I'm jumping way ahead because this conversation is diving deep into this subject.
That's cool. That's what we're here for.
They're crazy, let me know. Because my whole process started from a very rational, sort of scientific based background. So depending on who's listening to this, they might be, whoa, what is this? But yes, so the present moment, I think, is a time. Well, it's a time beyond time, a place beyond place, space, really, in which you are really deeply connected to the energy that lives between your cells, your atoms and whatnot. That if you start looking into quantum physics, that's pretty much the whole concept of it. But to go back to your question, is like, do I project myself doing for only that day? Well, not necessarily. I actually tend to project myself even beyond that. Also because in the long term, I see myself somewhere else, in another job, in another situation. So I reach out basically to how far I want to, in a sense of how it's going to make me feel. So if I get, because my objective really is to get really excited about my day ahead, to get really excited about my life. And so sometimes I see myself throughout that present day, but usually I go beyond that, in which I have all of my dreams sort of realized, but then going through my day, usually it's more my night meditation, my evening meditation, in which I look back and see where my programming, where my pattern sort of showed up, and how I can rehearse that for the future, for the next day, really. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And then during that process, thoughts that come into mind about the future, with the ones that make you feel anxious or just stresses you out, you just try to throw those out and then focus on the ones that gives you a more positive feeling.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, that's also another really good point, because I've taught meditation here a little bit
Oh, cool.
during during the lockdown. I in my building we have um, like a training room, and there's like a certain limit of people that can use them, and so I've been able to like book these rooms and then taught meditation, and I've had a lot of questions that came up like that, in which, oh, but I'm thinking during my meditation. I don't think I'm doing it right,
Mm,
or this isn't working for me. Like there's a lot of worry and anxiety about doing it right, and about the whole concept of, wait, I should not be thinking. But
mm,
that's not true at all. I mean, the whole brain is going to be doing whatever it needs to be doing, and a lot of it is to put things into boxes, and analyze things, and that's your rational brain. That's your beta waves, right? But once you want to drop to your meditation alpha or lower, then you start to vacillate between thinking and then coming back to, this is where I am now. This is so for me. I used I like guided meditations. I
mhm.
have recorded some as well that you can find on my Instagram,
Cool.
which can help if
Yeah.
someone wants to check them out. But I use guided meditation a lot, but sometimes I just use music. Um, but for me, the how I started meditation was with connecting to the body. So it was more of a healing type of meditation, a lying down meditation, in which it was always of like, oh, I'm thinking now. I'm come back. I go back to my body, and I just feel the body and feel the breathing, which is very simple but can be tricky. But what I've realized is that there's a lot of things happening in the body.
Mhm.
Quite surprisingly to me, I didn't realize. But at first, when I started, I was like, "Oh wait, I feel like I'm falling on one side," and then I'm like, "Oh no, I'm just there." And then suddenly I couldn't feel my arms. Like, where are my arms? It's like a trip, right? Like, where are they? And then you kind of like move slightly a finger, like, oh, there it is. And then you start feeling like you're giant, or like super small, and your body is way too small for you, like you're squeezed inside of your body.
Mm.
Or suddenly I would feel like little like feet walking on my torso. And when I remember the first time that happened, I was living in New York, and I opened my eyes to check, wait, are there like bugs or something on me?
Oh,
Because I was really like scared of roaches back then. I was like, whoa,
yeah.
is there a cockroach on me? But no, like there's nothing. And to the point that at some point I felt like a ball the size of a tennis ball like come out of my heel, my right heel. And then I felt like something plugged into my leg, and just like releasing some kind of warm liquid in my leg and stuff. But like really crazy experiences, and like stuff like little pinches on my head and under my feet, and kind of like cables, or as if like someone was playing my with my hair, like just pulling my hair a little bit, and stuff like that. And so, to answer the question, like this is often how I go back to myself, is to just reconnect to my body, because I have quite a lot of experiences in which I feel funny things in my body, and even if it's just like warmth, like around my hands or arms. And so if I feel myself start thinking, it's about the whole thing is not judging yourself for thinking, and not like being like, oh, beating yourself up for thinking, but just like, oh, there's a thought. Okay, let's go back to the body. So, for instance, this morning, I didn't have a meditation that was like insane, like I sometimes do, but it was quite a lot of going back and forth until I'm really centered. And then it just, it vacillates really.
Well, can you remember a time where you just decided that, okay, I need to do meditation, I need to go through this path, because whether it's to understand yourself better, or maybe something happened and then you just feel like there needs to be a change?
Hmm. Yes. So like a lot of people that are sort of on that self growth
Yeah,
empowerment path, there's often an event,
yeah,
uh, because sometimes we need a kick in the butt
yeah.
to be pulled out of our heads.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that mostly happens because we all have sort of a certain structure, education, and pattern that is not working for most of us until we run that program down, and then it's like we need to shift into something else to be in a healthier place. Um, but yeah, so for me, I have always been interested in spirituality. As a kid, my dad used to do Reiki, healing with the
Mm.
hands.
Oh wow.
um, and I grew up in a Christian um, Catholic family, which I do not consider myself Christian anymore, even though I'm glad I went through that.
Yeah.
Um, there's definitely concepts that I love in it, but then mostly the whole organization for me, like the whole church, is not something that makes sense to me anymore. But so I had some kind of a spiritual background, and then what really triggered the whole thing, the whole spiritual process for me, was when I was in high school, 18 years old or so. I had a very intense relationship, and when I decided to break up with that girl, it was really hard. Like, it was the best decision I've ever made, but because the relationship was really unhealthy.
Mm.
But it really like put me in a place where I needed some kind of help. And for some reason, well, it's not really part of my family, I guess, to go see a shrink or something, or
Yeah.
but I didn't even really think about that. For me, it was okay. I'm gonna turn to God. That was my first thing, my
Mm.
first thought. And I had like a good family friend who was this amazing lady. She's still alive. She's kind of like my grandma. She was my neighbor back then, and she's this woman who wakes up in the morning and she's like crying out of gratitude. She wakes up with her heart filled with gratitude, and she lost her son when he was in his 30s because he got AIDS. He used drugs heavily, and she lost her husband. He got cancer, and so she didn't have like the most beautiful life, yet she was able to like wake up and cry with gratitude, which for me was like, this is amazing. This is what I aspire to be. So I reached out to her, and she kind of like guided me through something that was quite very religious.
Okay.
And so I started seeing the devil everywhere. I was like, oh no, I'm thinking about something bad now. The devil is here and he's in my room. But because I've had like a very like, rational upbringing as well, and I went to university and all that eventually. So it was like I was able to sort of like catch myself, like, whoa, I'm not going down that path. I'm not going to let this happen to me. And that's when I started really doing my own research. And then I have to mention this guy that I met randomly when I was working on one of my side jobs in Switzerland. And he was like, I saw that he had this book from a spiritual master. I forgot his name now, but he's like a Bulgarian guy that a friend of mine was into, like her family was into that whole fraternity thing. It's not a fraternity, but it's called like a fraternity. And so I was like, oh, you like that, so you must like spirituality and stuff. We started talking, and then eventually he was like, hey, like he was like at least 20 years older than me, and then he invited me for coffee, and I was like, hey, well, just want to let you know I have a girlfriend. I was like, oh, no, it's not that at all. Uh, and so we had that moment, and then he was like, I'm just like really curious to know what do you think and stuff. And I ended up having coffee with him, and he had this like platform that he was developing, just a website with a lot of recordings of just these amazing people, from like the Pope to the Dalai Lama to like some of the most important people like Eckhart Tolle and like all these guys. And I suddenly had this amazing resource of information that had, because that was before Spotify.
Yeah.
um, and so I suddenly was able to download all of these tracks and listen to them. And so I really got into it into that whole like spirituality through mostly science-minded people that were able to measure certain things and talk about them in scientific terms, but sort of like demystifying the magic or the spirituality, because for me it really needed to be a process and needed to be something that I can reproduce, something that helps me understand myself and gives me tool to function in the world. I didn't want to be some kind of hippie just living on a hill in a cave or something, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't remember who said that, but it's something like, if spirituality wasn't a science, it would have disappeared. Um, so this is kind of like my mindset. I have to be able to reproduce the effects, and I have to be able to use these tools in my daily life.
Okay. Sounds like some kind of Mythbusters or just busting like spirituality.
In a sense, and it's like getting really excited about all these new things that you can experience, because you're experiencing with yourself. You're trying different things in your life, you're trying different things on yourself while you meditate and stuff. And it's like, it's, for me, I love magic. I mean, I grew up with Harry Potter. Like, this has been like huge for me as a kid. And so for me, it's more of like the connection between magic or the spirituality and science, kind of like meeting in the middle, um, in a sense that we can explain, because we forget on a daily life that science is a religion. You know, like, we all accept certain concepts. We do agree. We accept, okay, these things, these concepts that some scientists a while ago has decided this is the truth, because it is reproducible, like, because you can, but then there's plenty of new experiments that sort of counter that fact, and then it sort of like builds up, right? So you have, for a while, scientists believe that like radio waves would be not harmful, so they would like radio wave people's feet to see what would be the best foot for you, until they realized people get cancer from it, and then they stop, because they would get like weird like issues with their feet, or like people would they would give them as medicine what was like mercury, you know, like their cocaine was used as well, like as and still now is still used, like pretty heavy drugs that are quite dangerous to solve certain issues, right? So science is an amazing tool, and I love the fact that it really helps saving lives, especially when someone is like in a car crash or dying and whatnot. But then there's a lot of it that is just like, we sort of accept that it is the truth, yet a lot of people don't even have any proof of that. You know what I mean? They go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, we're not sure what you have." Well, they usually don't tell that to you, but
Yeah.
like, I went to the doctor a couple years ago because I couldn't breathe, and then the doctor was like, "Oh, it might be allergies." Like, I had a hard time breathing. Maybe it's allergies. Try this. And I was like, I've had allergies my whole life. I know this is not an allergy. And then I realized, oh, that was a panic attack. And then, but the doctor was not even like considering the fact that it could be something else. And so, if you actually start looking into the research, there's a lot of research that are quite crazy and could be considered hippy dippy spiritual stuff. Yet we have sort of a limited understanding of it, and we have an expectation of like, oh no, we just go to the doctor and see what he says and take the drugs that he gives us without actually healing anything. Well, I'm kind of like going into another direction right now, but yeah. So yeah.
Because I was about to ask is why do you think the doctors, or at least the doctor you saw, why do you think that he just dismissed a possibility of a panic attack and just, oh, we'll just take these drugs?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and I think you can definitely go down the route of in the route of, oh, doctors and science, and there's money behind it, and they're trying to control us and whatnot.
Got it.
Which I actually don't believe that myself strictly.
Okay.
I just think that medical education is, you know, we're at a time where we're awakening to new opportunities, new sciences, and new possibilities, and so it's just like a slow process of learning. And so some people need extra, even more proofs of things that are possible to be able to change their minds, because we identify with our minds, we identify with our
Mm,
beliefs, and if someone starts saying you're wrong, a lot of people will react as like a personal attack, especially if you're talking to a doctor about medicine and whatnot. They
mhm.
can be, like, no, I know more than you. Well, not that I've been in a situation in which I would tell a doctor what to think, but it can take a while for the mind and the ego to sort of like accustom itself to new ideas and new concepts. That's why change can be a bit difficult, because the brain and the mind is usually trying to find patterns and boxes and then just stay in these safe boxes. Um, I think really it's for many reasons. One of them is education and expectations and identifying with whatever you believe in. The other thing is medicine. Um, Universities also, in terms of research, get their money from certain companies. And so pharmaceutical companies, if you tell them, well, we have this concept about the human mind maybe that we might not need medicine to heal, then the pharmaceutical companies will be, well, that's not really helping us, so we're not going to be funding this
Yeah,
research.
yeah,
Not It's not necessarily coming from a place of like, oh no, we want to control, but it's a business minded thing.
yeah.
If it's not helping their business, they're not going to put their money into it, um, which makes total sense. um, so I think there's more and more new research. I mean, I at the moment I'm reading Dr. Bruce Lipton's book on, is it The Biology of Belief, which
Okay.
is um, like one of the major books about uh, epigenetics. And he had to go around and do his own research in a way to be able to prove what he thought was true, what he discovered and what he tried to express. But then a lot of people were like, no, I don't like this. I'm not going to accept it. So I think it's kind of the issue is pretty much how human function. Like, we do sort of identify with certain things, and if you come up with a solution, you're like, yep, this is what it is, and you build your whole life on top of it. If someone tells you, actually, the pyramids were not built in 20 years with stones picked up over there, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the guy would be like, no, this is what I found. But then if you check with other sciences, you're like, wait, no, that's actually doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
So in a sense, like if our minds are conditioned a certain way, let's say like okay, like we believe in certain, let's say certain concepts, or even, or let's say even like using meditation as an example. So if someone believes that doing meditation will help, like let's say heal their back injury, then somehow it'll just happen because the mind itself is powerful that way, that it can release, I guess, certain toxins or certain chemicals, right, to help relieve the pain. So just from that alone, that's, would you think that would be the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a really good question. Can meditation heal your body? Well, like, at the moment I've been quite passionate about Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Oh yeah.
he basically is one of the guys who healed his back
Oh yeah.
specifically, using using his techniques of a lot of meditation and whatnot. And then and so his whole concept is, what he likes to say a lot is, if your thoughts can make you sick and anxious, because it's proven, right? If you start worrying about your future, you're going to be more anxious, and that releases a certain type um, um, of toxins in your body that puts you into a survival mode, which is really useful in when you have to escape an animal or an actual danger, but
Yeah.
not in our daily life current situations. But because we are putting ourselves through our thoughts and thought patterns, and we get super anxious and stuff, and then we weaken our nervous system, we weaken our immune system, and then we get sick. So if your thoughts can make you sick and your thoughts make you well, it's kind of the same concept. I think the thing is, meditation can help you really reduce your anxiety and relaxes your immune system. And and it's not that it's necessarily for everyone or that it's necessarily easy for everyone, because someone who's heavily in their heads and where their thought pattern is heightened, and that they end up like in their heads a lot, and more anxious, like meditation by themselves can actually make them even more aware of these things and get them even more anxious. Because I've tried to talk meditation to some people that were like that, and they didn't keep going because it was quite difficult for them. Um, but I do believe that if you let space, if you in during your meditation, by making room for whatever that's making your heart beat, whatever that is keeping you alive, whatever that is that made your unique cell into a baby that grew you into a human being, whatever that energy is that we don't have to call anything, but whatever that unexplicable thing that science still doesn't know about, but yet we're studying the human body, but we're not questioning why is the heart beating.
Mhm.
And whatever that energy is makes your blood cells create crust where there is a wound and heal your body. The same way I think that if you make space for your body to heal itself in a deeper way by letting go of your beliefs that you cannot heal, letting go of your belief that you need a drug to heal, letting go of your belief that you need a doctor's approval to be healed, then you can absolutely heal. So meditation can be just a place in which you relax and allow yourself to get better. But it can also be a place in which you decide to let go of your beliefs for your healing to actually happen. Yeah.
Okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. I mean, you mentioned that if our mind can heal us and also kill us, so from that logic, it means that maybe, let's say if someone has cancer, then maybe we don't even have to take drugs. If our mind believes that the cancer can be healed, then could it actually be healed? And so that's where like the weird, I guess, cross of science and the mind or spirituality, right?
Yeah. I I absolutely believe that's true.
Oh, you really?
I know it's kind of a sensitive subject, but I think that, I mean, it's my own personal opinion, but I base it off of research that you can
Okay.
find in some of these books as well. Um, Now, I haven't myself conducted any of these research, and I have not been present, and I haven't personally talked to someone that healed their cancer with their minds. So that's why it's kind of my opinion and my choice to believe that this is possible.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I've talked to people studying medicine, and I've listened to a lot of these podcasts as well that are really empowering the mind and empowering the humans by letting them know that they can do anything they want. But I've talked to I had a friend of mine, her grandfather was a doctor, and she was studying medicine, and she was saying, like, according to her grandfather, 90% of diseases would be healed if people were not anxious.
Really?
and and that's a really high number, and that's
Yeah.
I remember it because it's like, that's crazy. um and then also like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, they kind of also follow that kind of same philosophy of a lot of our issues that when we go to the doctor, a lot of the issues that we go to the doctor to see, to get them checked and whatnot, it's actually all started from a place of anxiety,
Mm.
because the immune system is lowered, because we're crunching our muscles, because we're reducing ourselves, we're victimizing ourselves from thinking that we cannot fight viruses and bacterias, and in which we make our body weaker that way, and then we are much more prone to get sick. And cancer is one of these things that is created by your own body. Like, there's no cancer virus, there's no cancer bacteria.
Yeah.
And even if you start looking into your genes, there's some people that in the same family, like even twins that have the same genes, one will have cancer and the other won't. And you're like, why is that? So the whole like cancer gene also apparently based on what Bruce Lipton is writing, because I'm not a doctor myself, it really seems that there's a need of a lot of combination of genes and external elements, and then so external, the environment of the cells themselves, which is your body and your mental state, but also external, your environment around yourself. So it's a whole like a combination of things. So can the body heal? Can you heal from cancer using meditation? I believe yes, but it's not necessarily. You also have to be able to change your environment, like your inner environment, your mental environment, and possibly your physical environment as well. And it can be food as well. It can be all sorts of things to try and change. And the use of meditation will just allow yourself to be in a more centered and calm place to welcome change.
It's so insane though, just to listen to you say 95%. I mean, it's
A really high number.
it is a ridiculously high number, and not only that is, I mean, because most people would think that our minds, our brains, there to help us, right? It help us, guide us to whether to invent something or create something or whatever it is, right? But then now to think of it in another direction, it's almost like the minds are killing ourselves every day in a way.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. We believe that our minds are there to, as you said, allow us to create, to function, and to grow our civilization and stuff. But this is just such a Western,
Western way.
thinking of like the mind, the power of the mind. We are intellectual beings, and we will use our brains to whatever. We are better than anybody else because we're better than animals because we have a brain and because we can use reason. The truth is, the reason, the logic, the brain is only useful as a tool, like an Excel page or as a dictionary or as such. And that's the only thing that it is. Our brain is a collection of memories and of information that we've learned throughout our life. So there's nothing new in our brain. We're not creating anything new using our brain. We're using our logic. For me, it's even more clear because I come from an artistic background. But you can talk to musicians, to dancers, to writers, to actors. They will all tell you the same. Like the moment you create something new, you're not thinking. So you can use your brain to do the research. You can use your brain to schedule your rehearsals. You can use your brain to organize your life around it and give you all the elements to let go of that brain so you can create. You know what I mean? And so this whole civilization, like using your brain when you were a caveman and someone would tell you, well, one day we can fly, they'd be like, yeah, right. Like we have no proof. We have no previous experience of humans flying.
Yeah.
So they're like, this is impossible. Until some guys decided to create the plane and try until they could actually fly. But back then people were probably thinking it's impossible. Just like, was it like the saying, they did it because they didn't know it was impossible. You know what I mean? It's like the first guy who climbed the Everest, I believe, was like, people thought it was impossible, and then someone did it, and now you have like tour guides like going up there. You know what I mean? Like buses of people. But, so that's a really good point. We have to be aware that our brain is a dictionary, and if you give the dictionary or the graphic card of your computer the role of guiding your life, it's just going to try to put everything into a box, to understand it, to store it, and to get that information. And it's going to try to avoid everything new, because it's really hard. It's difficult for a dictionary to understand something new. So they'd rather recreate the whole thing, the same days, the same using the same information. And that is why it's so important to realize, no, the mind is not there to kill us, but most of us function in a way in which, oh, the mind is the guide,
Yeah.
the main, the captain of the ship, but that's not what it should be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's when it really becomes destructive. And so using the mind to learn and to schedule things, it's great. But then we have to get into a new place, a heightened place, using intuition, using your heart, and using your guts to function.
That's no, it's interesting because it's also interesting that you brought up the fact that it's such a Western, mindset. It's, to power the mind, you gotta be the best, right? The greatest. It, I
Yeah.
I find it interesting because it's almost as if the Western mind is very ego driven. When you say, because, so let's say you, because you brought up the fact that, like, okay, no one thought that that you can fly, like it's impossible. So someone goes and invent airplane to fly, right? But the only reason why you would do that is because it's kind of like your ego talking, right? Because why would you even care if, okay, I invent this thing to prove to people that we could fly? I mean, why? You know what I mean? Like it's like, why is that such a big deal, right? So then that's why it feels like Western minds are very ego driven in a sense. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean,
I don't know if you agree
I'm
with
not.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what the process was. Was it the Wright brothers,
Yeah.
and Mr. Montgolfier and all these guys? I'm not sure exactly what their process was in creating. Um, I I think the ego can be sort of a tool in terms of like I want to prove myself and others
Okay.
that I can make this happen.
Okay.
Um, it could be a driving force, but I also believe that there's a whole like dreamer thing.
Hmm.
Some people just dream their life in a different way,
Okay.
and they want to show others what is possible. I but there's definitely both. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, of course, like you probably want to find that balance, because too much of the, I guess, oh, I gotta prove you wrong, then that's when where you, like where you're saying, becomes destructive, right? Because it's like always
Yeah,
having a chip on your shoulder for whatever reason,
exactly. And that process will, eventually like hit you, like bite you in the butt, because if you it's like you need confrontation to be able to find yourself and to express yourself. And so if you do realize, oh, if you're able to actually make that plane fly, and now everyone is like, yeah, you were right, then you're going to find someone else to fight.
Yeah.
um, so that kind of mentality is quite self-destructive as well. um,
Okay.
yeah.
And let me ask you this. So,
Mhm.
'cause since you've been, now you moved over to Japan, you've been working there for about a year. What are some differences that you see in terms of the way how the people there think, comparing to like the Western civilization?
That's a really good question, and this is actually quite fascinating because
Oh,
for me,
okay.
there's been moments where I'm like, "What? I would never think that way. I would. This is so crazy," and that's what I love it. I just love this. It's not a challenge for me. It's just like discovering new ways of thinking. Like I grew up in Switzerland, but then I lived in America for the past 10 years, and now I'm living in Japan. And so I definitely had myself, my identity, my belief system shook by all of these different places I lived in. Um, and so there's something that I found really interesting recently is that it's the whole community concept. So I'm not sure exactly how it is in other Asian countries because I haven't lived there, but in Japan, the community is more important than the self.
Oh, okay.
So it's thinking about others first in a sense. So it's thinking about how everyone together can function together, which I think is way more beneficial in long term than more of like the American mindset of like, I'm going to make myself rich and that's it. Uh, but what I found, yeah, but what I found as well is that when you start looking into other, so okay, so to explain you, for instance, you can drop your wallet on the floor or in the train, and it's gonna be there until someone picks it up and puts it into the lost and found. I saw a tiny little pod, like one of these AirPods or whatever on the floor, and I saw a group of people just pick it up and put it on the side on the chair so people can find it. Um, and like, there's barely any security in shops. Like you can just go in, grab whatever you want, and leave. Like potentially, most of security guys I see are old Japanese men. Like it's not scary. You know what I mean? Because um, people get offended if someone's smoking in the street because it's not respectful for others. Um, there's so much of that. There's so much of this is how it is. And when you work for a Japanese company, it's like if the boss says something, you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And you can try and tell them your decision doesn't make sense. The answer will be, but this is how it is. This is how we function. This is what we do. So there's plenty of times where like, why are they doing this? And the answer is just because this is how it is, because this is how we function. This is how we can, it's like the flock of birds flying together. It's that kind of mentality of like everyone is sort of respecting each other. Like, and you can see when you're in a crowded place, like people just like can cross the streets and not hit each other, but there's so many people. So now it's a bit different because of Corona, definitely less people in the streets and whatnot, but there's definitely that sense of group. And that's why when the nuclear plant exploded and it was the tsunami that made the nuclear plant explode in Fukushima 10 years, 12 years ago or something, everyone was just like helping each other and helping each other to find the people who were lost and like heal people, whatever it was. Like they were just working as a team. And I remember the American news back then, they were like, oh, this is incredible. They're doing it's incredible to see human people like just getting together and helping each other. But this is already the Japanese mentality. Another thing is like in the winter, everyone is wearing masks because they don't want to be spreading something if they have it. So it's not to protect themselves, it's to avoid getting other people sick.
Yeah.
And so you usually see people sick wearing them so they can still go to work if they have a little bit of a cold. And because of that, 90% of people do that every year anyways. Since the pandemic happened, everyone is wearing masks all year long, everywhere, in the streets, and they're in parks, like all the time. So it's like, yeah, definitely the whole like group thing is much more important than the self, which is something that I also aspire to be more like in a sense, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to like, get that wealth. I need to get that job and that life. But then I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, I definitely want to reach the goals that I'm setting for myself, but how can I give back? And that's something that I've noticed a lot in with spiritual teachers like Tony Robbins or Joe Dispenza, Cartoli, or Oprah. Is like they're trying to make information available. They try to bring consciousness to the rest of us, because at the end of the day, if everyone is awakened, everyone is wealthy, everyone is happy, there can be just more of that. We can just feed more of that. We can create more of that creativity. We can be less into this mindset of I have to steal to before someone steals from me. I was talking to my girlfriend who's Japanese, about the whole like, well, in shops in Europe, like you have, or America, like you have security everywhere. And then she was like, but people don't feel guilty when they steal. No, because they think that someone might steal from them, or that people are stealing from them. You know what I mean? So they grow up thinking, no, like you have to help each other out.
Right. Okay, so getting back on actually that point, I was gonna piggyback on that point, is that it sounds like that in Western cultures is a lot of I, but in Eastern cultures a lot of we, like,
Mhm.
because the group thing, right? It's just
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting. I always wonder why that's the case, because like what you said, if it's more beneficial long term, then why not think of it as like a community we for like everywhere,
Hmm.
why does it have to be I all the time and being so like individual
Hmm.
driven?
Yeah.
So I always wonder, I always think about it, and like why that's the case. And also to get to your point about Tony Robbins and those guys, like I appreciate that they are giving back and they're doing a lot of good things, but at the same time, it's not like they're helping people for free. They are also charging a lot of money. So there's a little bit of that. You could argue, say, selfishness. But I mean, I don't want to go that far because I don't know them personally, so I'm not going to say that. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and especially when you start talking about spirituality and self-help, it becomes kind of a point that a lot of people think, wait, but if you're talking about spirituality and self-help and love, why are you charging?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think things are going to be shifting, to be honest. But I think that there is no reason why you shouldn't be paid for helping people. I don't think that, like, doctors get paid and they get paid a shit lot of money, some of them. So I think that if you can create and um, if you can help people heal and give them good content, you should be rewarded for it. But but and also the whole like concept that if you're willing to spend a lot of money into a class, you will also be more willing and open to receive information because you're putting a lot of effort into allowing yourself to get there. And so you're like, oh yeah, I'm spending a shitload of money, I better get something out of it.
yeah.
uh, that as well. I'm not sure if that's necessarily their mindset, but I think things are going to be shifting, because I think eventually just the way, especially with digital stuff, I think that most likely a lot more information will be available. Just because if you look at it, YouTube videos, like a lot of YouTubers can just be making money out of ads.
Yeah.
So if they're creating good content and if they're putting out there good information that are actually helpful and like giving back in a sense information, there's going to be a lot of views. And because there's a lot of views, there's going to be a lot of money made by commercials, by ads. And so that way, because of that, I feel like the trend might be shifting in the future into different ways of creating passive income that will pay you without, and at the same time allow you to give for free in a way.
Okay.
um I think.
And are those, so that's kind of like the insights that you've gained since you started working in Japan and you lived there, because being in like a different culture, I'm sure your mindset shifted too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's fascinating to see how like every little obstacles or details in your life can be bringing you to the next level in a way.
Okay.
um so for me, like I've been quite spiritual for a while, but during the pandemic, during the lockdown that we had here in May, I found myself like drinking alcohol much more than I
Ooh.
wanted to, that I thought and then I was like, this is, I'm not liking where I'm going with this. And at some point I was like, I had a drink almost every day for a month,
Ooh.
at like in the evenings, and not to a point where I'd be like really drunk,
Yeah.
but like a drink or two. And then I was like, this is going the wrong place, because I felt that anxiety of like, oh, this is going to calm me down,
Mhm.
and I'm looking forward for that drink at night. And I when I realized that, I was like, no. And the time, there's this one moment, this one clear moment, you're like, I'm making this decision now to change. And I think I'm not exactly sure how you can put that moment, that feeling, into an equation, but if you can, you got gold there, because it's a very important moment in which you get into that mindset, and then you make it a clear choice, with a clear intention, and you have that will and you change. And so I stopped drinking for a whole month, um, just in the kind of in the middle of it. And I completely cleared out that process, that I cleared that physical need that I sort of somehow created through that anxiety of the pandemic. And being quite of a spiritual person, meditating for a while, I was thinking, oh, lockdown should be fun, like I should be able to meditate all day, create all day, and like awaken and like study. And I wasn't able to do any of that. So that was kind of like, for me, a moment of realization of like, oh, there's still something, quite a lot in me that I need to work through. Right. And then that moment, that clear moment of change was huge for me. And then earlier in the summer, I started like feeling again a bit of anxiety because I've had some difficult relationships in the past, and like starting this new one, a lot of things came up, and suddenly I had that clear intention after a month of feeling again like sort of anxiety throughout a month of like thinking, no, now I need to change. And that's when I decided to do every morning early meditations and every night meditation. I stopped coffee as well for a month. And then I realized that trying things like that, like for a month at least, you are restarting your body and you're letting go of whatever that your body is asking for, that those chemicals to keep going, because your body becomes addicted to whatever your brain is sending and creating. And so by stopping these things, I found out that you can like sort of reset. And so I stopped coffee for a while, and then December was kind of like a month where I allowed myself to eat more sweets and stuff. And now I'm like, I'm doing vegan month this month. I'm trying to do as less added sugar as I can, because sometimes it's difficult here in Japan.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing that, and no alcohol as well. And just to like, what I've noticed is by you learn and you see what is happening in your body, you sort of reset your program in a way, but then it also gives you such power. Like it's very empowering, because then you're like, I was able to stop this for a month. I was able to change this for a month. So now I can change anything I want. I can establish whatever new discipline I want in my life. And I think it was John Assaraf who said, no matter who you are and whatever, I'm paraphrasing, right? But he said basically we are all disciplined, whether you want it or not. You're disciplined to waking up at a certain time, drinking coffee, doing this, doing that, going to work. Whatever you're doing, that's your discipline. So if that's your discipline, you can change it into a new discipline, which for me was like really revealing, because I moved from Switzerland to America, to New York, to LA, Chicago, back to Switzerland for a month, and then Japan. And when you move, especially from different countries and different states, you realize how much of a new discipline you have to implement in your life, because you have to do your groceries somewhere else. You have to buy new things because you're not getting what you usually get. And so the first like week or 2 weeks or so, you're like trying things and discovering things, and then slowly you have this new discipline. And I'm using like groceries because that's something that was huge for me, that I really realized, really noticed. But the same way, if you're able to like, oh, now I'm going to stop doing this. When I became vegetarian/vegan, plant-based, I also had to sort of shift the way I did my groceries. And so at first you're like trying, and then, okay. And then you create that new discipline. And when you decide to work out, it's the same thing. Like if you're able to find that time of the day or these days of the week, and then do it for a long enough period of time until it becomes that discipline, then you don't need to have willpower. You don't need to force yourself to do something, because you're doing it regardless.
Right. Because essentially changing the discipline, it'll kind of slowly turn into a habit, like a good habit, or, of course, the ones that have no control, then it becomes a bad habit, like drinking, smoking.
Exactly. Whatever it is, it becomes your new habit. And so for me, Japan has been quite revealing that way, because not only we had the pandemic and we had all that, but also the fact that people are acting and reacting in such different ways. Like when I go to work, every day is just, everyone is so like, oh, good morning. Like everyone is saying hello. At the end of the day, everyone is saying, you look tired, which is a Japanese way of saying thank you for your hard work.
Right.
The literal translation is, you are tired. thanks, I guess. No, but you know what I mean? Like there's definitely a lot of like respect, and like there's different ways of interacting when you go to the shop or you're in the train, and like how people look at you. Like people do look at me like I'm an alien a lot of the time. Which is quite interesting because they don't have that many foreigners in Japan.
Oh.
Yeah, very little. And so a lot of the time I get people staring at me. Like at IKEA, I had a kid like shouting, "Mom, there's a foreigner!" They're like, "Yes, that's right, son." I am. And so it's like you have like these moments that are, it pulls you out of your world, out of your mental construct, like to become a foreigner, to become because I was a foreigner in America, but because I'm white and because I'm able to produce a decent American accent, people would not really think twice. But here it's different, and that's wonderful because it forces you to take notes of how you function.
Yeah.
The same way, if you speak another language and you try to explain to a friend of yours, this is how you say that word, and then suddenly you're like, you have numbers and things like, oh shit, this word is so strange.
Yeah.
But I grew up saying that word forever. You know, like Japanese language is such a limited language that, you know, their sounds are very limited compared to all the vowels that we have in American, in English, or all the consonants and whatnot. It's quite reduced. Like they don't have really a clear P, like a V, B sound is not very differentiated. They don't really have an R sound. The R and L is the same basically. And so when you try to explain, no, this is not how you say it. This is how you say it. No, they can't hear you because they don't have the knowledge and understanding of the sound, and they think they're reproducing the same thing, which is something I had to go through when I was learning American accent, because there's a lot of sounds that we don't have in French, and so it makes you reconsider things. It makes you change how you behave and how you talk, and even my friends that are not learning Japanese here, who are foreigners, they're still starting to behave in a different way. There's much more bowing happening. There's much more hi, arigatou gozaimasu. And like, even if they don't really say words because they're not really learning the language, they're reproducing the behavior so that they can express respect a way that the Japanese would understand. It's just fascinating. I would recommend it to anyone once the pandemic is over. If you can, try and go live in another country, especially a country like Japan. Even if it's for a month, teaching English or something, because you're learning so much about yourself and others and how the world could function in a different way. Not that Japan is perfect, but like Medicare, like, you know, like it's so cheap to go to the hospital. Not that I necessarily go a lot. But I just love the fact that if I am injured, or that if I have a major issue, that I can go to a hospital without paying too much money. And I wear contacts, so it's affordable to go see the eye doctor, you know? So it's like, yes.
Okay. Wow. No, that's great, man. It sounds like you're having a blast over there, and that's great. And I guess to kind of wrap this up, a final question for you is what, I guess I guess we can look towards the future. I guess for the rest of this year, what are you looking towards and what are you hoping to achieve?
Good questions. So yes. So there are many different things that came out through my meditations to me. One of them is I've been able pretty much to feel extreme gratitude throughout my meditations since I got into the process, into this new process. And I've been able to get myself to cry of joy and gratitude, which for me, I thought it would take me ages to get to that place, which I'm so grateful. And just the fact that I feel gratitude gives me even more gratitude. You know, it's like this kind of like healthy cycle. And so that in that term for me is, I want to keep building that energy, and I want to be able to let go of more of reducing or limiting mindsets, and I just want to be able to carry that gratitude every day, on without meditating. You know, it's like being able to walk and talk to people and just feel so happy that I could almost cry throughout the day. That's like my main goal in terms of spirituality. And then I also have other goals. I do want to develop passive income, just because as an artist and because we don't know what's going to happen to retirement for once we get there. I'd like to make sure that I have my money put in the right bank accounts and put my money in the right investments, and creating paths for abundance to come into my life in a more just in a more systemized way, so I don't have to be always necessarily looking for jobs, to create some kind of a stability there. And in terms of creativity as well, I've been drawing a lot, and I've had people asking me if I was printing these drawings into like on t-shirts and masks and stuff like that. So I'm putting that up as well. I'm going to be creating a page. And this month I'm also not doing Instagram, so it's like, it's an interesting way of like tracking myself. But once I get back onto Instagram, I'll keep on posting about my experiences in Japan. This is my system really at the moment, is a picture about my experiences in Japan, a picture about self-help, because at first I was just doing it for myself, but then I've had a lot of people just telling me thank you for sharing the thoughts. So I don't know who's reading, and if they want to read it or not, it doesn't matter to me, but I still want to keep giving out my experiences, what I learned from them, and hopefully help others as well. So anyone who wants to follow me, feel free. And then my drawings as well. So I'm sort of like establishing that.
Awesome. I love it. This is a good way to end things. And I do want to, we'll do this offline, because I do want to talk to you about your drawings as well, just because.
Cool.
Yeah, because there's some stuff that I'm planning on my end, which I may need, an artist. For, Yeah. But we can talk more offline. But anyways, yeah. But this has been fun, Luca. It's such a joy to hear about your experiences and the stories, and glad that everything's working out great in Japan. I mean, I saw some of your posts too. I mean, you seem like you're having such a awesome time, and so it's like I kind of want to be over there too now.
Please come and visit once the whole thing is over.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Then that's cool. I have a pad to crash it. Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to wrap up here. And of course, stay tuned for future episodes. We'll be back. Goodbye, everyone.